Kim Young sit on the bedroom floor for the 17th time that month. Another woman scrambled away from him, her designer heels forgotten as she ran. She didn't even bother with an apology this time. He stayed on the floor, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse suite. The silk sheets above him were perfectly arranged. Untouched. Like always. 17. The first one had made it to the bed before her survival instincts kicked in. She'd seen the tattoos crawling up his arms, the scars mapping violence across his chest, and something in her had broken. She'd whispered "I can't" and disappeared into the soul night. The second had actually tried. She'd lasted maybe 5 minutes before the reality of who, and what, he was overwhelmed her. The way he moved. The way he looked at her like he owned the air she breathed. She'd pushed him away so hard he'd nearly crashed through the nightstand. Numbers 3 through 9 had variations on the same theme. Some fled before clothes even came off. One had the audacity to laugh, a high-pitched, terrified sound before she bolted. Another had called him a monster to his face, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and disgust. Numbers 10 through 16? He'd stopped keeping detailed mental notes. They all ended the same way, with him alone on imported Italian marble floors, surrounded by luxury he could buy but intimacy he couldn't. And now 17 had just slammed the door so hard the Murano glass vase near the entrance rattled. Kim Young was the undisputed king of Seoul's underworld. He controlled territories from Gangnam to Dongducheon. Police commissioners took his calls. Rival syndicates sent tribute just to avoid his attention. Men twice his age bowed when he entered a room. But in his bedroom, he was just a man who terrified every woman who saw him without his clothes on. Before we go into details, click subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, Australia, Korea, all of the United States of America, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're listening from. Let's begin. Kim Young phone buzzed. His lieutenant, Park Min-young, never called this late unless it was important. "Boss, I found someone for the PA position." Young closed his eyes. His previous assistant had quit 2 weeks ago, said his wife couldn't sleep knowing what kind of secrets he kept. Fair enough. The job required someone who could handle classified information that could topple governments, manage schedules that included both corporate mergers and contract killings, and most critically, keep their mouths shut. One leaked detail and he'd be dead before sunrise. Another corporate type? Young's voice was flat. The last 3 candidates had lasted less than a week each. Not exactly. Min-young sounded amused, which was unusual. She's American. Black girl, mid-20s. Been surviving in Dongducheon doing various jobs. Sharp as hell. No family here. Nothing to threaten, nothing to lose. And boss? He paused. She doesn't scare easy. Send her tomorrow. Young ended the call. He pulled himself off the floor, his tattooed arms flexing as he grabbed his silk robe. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul glittered beneath him, a city he controlled with an iron fist everywhere except in this one room. 17 women in 30 days. He'd accepted it by now. This was his reality. Untouchable in every sense of the word. The next morning, Kim Young sat in his office at the top of Young Group headquarters, the legitimate face of his very illegitimate empire. The interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. At 9:07, his office door opened without a knock. A woman walked in wearing black combat boots, ripped jeans that had seen better days, and a leather jacket over a white tank top. Her hair was pulled back in a high ponytail, and she carried a worn backpack covered in patches from cities he'd done business in, New York, Philippines, Bangkok. She didn't bow. Didn't apologize for being late. Didn't show even a flicker of the nervousness that usually radiated off people entering his inner sanctum. She just looked at him with dark, assessing eyes, and said, "You Kim Young?" Min-young, standing by the door, went rigid. His hand instinctively moved toward his weapon. Nobody addressed the boss like that. Ever. Jung studied her, his expression unreadable. And you are? Elizabeth Rowley. Your new assistant. Min Young's girlfriend said you needed someone who wouldn't piss themselves when shit gets real. She dropped into the chair across from his desk without being invited to sit. So here I am. Jung's eyes narrowed. This girl had no idea who she was talking to. You're here based on a recommendation. That doesn't mean you have the job. Cool. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling like she was checking the weather. What do I need to do to prove myself? Put the phone away. Jung's voice dropped into that register that made lieutenants sweat and rivals reconsider their life choices. Elizabeth looked up, met his gaze directly, held it for 3 seconds, 5, 10, then slowly slid the phone into her jacket pocket. Better? Min Young coughed to cover what might have been a laugh. Jung's jaw tightened. Most people couldn't hold his stare for more than a few seconds. This woman was going on 30 seconds and counting, like she was trying to read his tax returns through his skull. The job pays well, Jung said, sliding a contract across the polished mahogany desk. Very well. But it comes with risks. People will try to kill you to get to me. They'll offer you money, considerable amounts, to betray me. They'll threaten your family. Don't have family to threaten. Elizabeth's voice was matter-of-fact, no self-pity. And I've been on the streets long enough to know what real danger looks like. People have tried worse than killing me. She met his eyes again. Didn't work out for them. Read the contract. Carefully. Elizabeth picked it up, her eyes scanning the pages with surprising speed. Her eyebrows rose slightly at certain sections, but she didn't look shocked, just interested. The contract outlined everything: manage his schedule across both legitimate and illegitimate business, handle confidential documents that could destroy empires, accompany him to all meetings whether in corporate boardrooms or warehouse interrogations, travel internationally at a moment's notice, and, the part that made most candidates balk, when necessary, pose as his fiancée to maintain appearances in Seoul's high society and underworld alike. The compensation was outrageous. The danger was constant. The secrets were lethal. Elizabeth flipped to the last page, then looked up at him. This says I have to be available 24/7. Does that include barging into your personal spaces when you're doing personal stuff? If it's urgent business, yes. Good to know. She pulled a pen from her backpack, not some expensive Mont Blanc like his executives used, but a cheap ballpoint that probably came from a convenience store. Because I don't do boundaries when someone's trying to kill my boss. I've seen men die because their assistants were too polite to interrupt their shower. Jung blinked. That was oddly specific. One more thing, Elizabeth said, pen hovering over the signature line. This whole fiancé thing. I'm guessing that means I'll have to touch you in public, act all couple-y and shit? That's correct. And you're okay with that? Because the way Min Young tells it, you have a pretty specific reputation with women. She said it casually, like she was asking about his coffee preferences. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Min Young looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Nobody talked about Kim Young's private failures. Ever. But Jung found himself oddly fascinated. What exactly did Min Young tell you? That you're basically unhandleable. That women run from you like you're cursed or something. Elizabeth shrugged. I figured it's either because you're genuinely terrifying, which, respectfully, you are, or because these Seoul socialites are soft as hell. And which do you think it is? Elizabeth signed the contract with a flourish, then slid it back across the desk. I think, she said, standing up and slinging her backpack over one shoulder, that you've never met someone who's seen worse than whatever darkness you're carrying around. When do I start? Jung looked at the signed contract, then back at this impossible woman who'd just walked into his life like she owned it. You just did. He pressed the intercom button. Min Young, show Miss Rowley to her office. And get her a corporate card. Don't need the corporate card yet, Elizabeth said from the doorway. These boots have another month in them. But I'll take a key to your penthouse. If someone's trying to kill you at 3 a.m., I need to be able to get there before they succeed. She walked out before he could respond. Kim Young sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the contract with her signature, messy, confident, completely unconcerned with appearances. For the first time in 30 days, he smiled. Maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found someone who wouldn't run. He had no idea she was about to become his worst nightmare. And the only woman who could save him from it. Elizabeth's first official day started at 6 a.m. with a text that simply read, "Penthouse. Now." She showed up at 6:47 in the same combat boots, carrying 2 cups of convenience store coffee because she'd figured out within 12 hours that Kim Young ran on caffeine and control. The penthouse door was already unlocked. She walked through rooms that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, marble floors, original artwork, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was pristine. Untouched. Cold. She found him in his office. He dropped down when he sensed her presence, barely winded. "You're late. You didn't specify AM or PM." Elizabeth held out one of the coffees. "You drink it black, right? You look like the type." Kim stared at the cheap coffee cup like it might explode, then took it. He took a sip, made a face. "This is terrible." "Yeah, well, I'm not on the corporate card yet, and the 7-Eleven on the corner doesn't carry whatever bougie shit you probably drink." She dropped into a leather office chair in front of him and pulled out her phone. "We need to talk about your schedule." She didn't look up from her phone. "Your calendar is a disaster. You've got a board meeting at 9, a lunch with someone named Choi who I'm guessing you want to intimidate, and then nothing until a private appointment at 7 p.m. What's the private appointment?" Kim stared at her, his jaw tight. Every assistant he'd ever had treated his personal time as sacred, untouchable. "That's not your concern." "Everything's my concern now. That's what the contract says." Elizabeth finally looked up. "Is it a woman? Because if it is, I need to know so I can clear your evening for when she inevitably runs away and you need someone to drink with." The coffee cup cracked slightly in his grip. "Too soon?" Elizabeth smiled, not apologetic in the least. "Look, Minyoung briefed me. 17 women in a month. That's almost impressive from a statistical standpoint. I'm just trying to be efficient here. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Sure I don't." She stood up, walked towards him, completely unbothered. "But here's what I do know, you run an empire that requires absolute secrecy, you've got enemies who'd pay millions for your location at any given moment, and you waste time on women who can't handle the fact that you're not some K-drama pretty boy." She grabbed a file from his desk. "The Choi meeting, he's the one trying to move product through your territory without permission, right?" Kim's eyes narrowed. "How did you?" "Minyoung talks when he drinks. His girlfriend talks when he talks. I listen when people talk." Elizabeth flipped through the file with practiced efficiency. "You're meeting him to send a message. You need me there playing the devoted fiancé so he thinks you're distracted, vulnerable. Then you drop the hammer." She wasn't asking. She was telling him his own strategy. "You've been here one day." "Yeah, and I've already figured out that you're brilliant, terrifying, and completely unhandleable in all the ways that matter." Elizabeth tossed the file back on his desk. "Good thing I don't handle, I manage. There's a difference." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and boss? Cancel the 7 p.m. appointment. You're having dinner with me instead. We need to establish ground rules, and I need to make sure you can actually be seen in public with a black woman without your associates losing their minds." "I didn't agree to." "See you at 9. Wear your favorite suit, the one you wore in the new last week. It makes you look less like you're about to murder someone." The door closed behind her. Kim Young stood alone in his penthouse, holding terrible convenience store coffee, staring at the space where Elizabeth Rowley had just completely dismantled his authority without breaking a sweat. For the first time since the rejection started, he laughed. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Minyong, "Where the hell did you find her?" The response came immediately, "Streets of Dongdukian." "Why? You want me to send her back?" Kim looked at the empty doorway, remembering the way she'd met his eyes without flinching, sat in his chair like she owned it, invaded his space like fear wasn't a concept she understood. "No," he typed back. "I want you to run a complete background check. Everything. I need to know who she really is." Because women like Elizabeth Rowley didn't just appear out of nowhere, unafraid of men who made others tremble. She was either exactly what he needed or the most dangerous thing that had ever walked into his life. Possibly both. The suit made Kim look marginally less homicidal, which Elizabeth considered a win. They sat across from each other at a private table in his penthouse dining room, not a restaurant, because apparently Kim Young didn't do public breakfast meetings with new employees who might ask uncomfortable questions. She'd changed into clean jeans and a black button-down she'd stolen from an ex-boyfriend 3 years ago. Still no heels. "We need to renegotiate," Elizabeth said, spreading the contract out between their untouched plates of food some invisible staff had prepared. Kim's chopsticks paused halfway to his mouth. "You signed it yesterday." "I signed the preliminary agreement. This," she tapped a clause on page 7, "is some bullshit I didn't fully appreciate until I read it at 3 a.m. You read contracts at 3 a.m.? I read everything at 3 a.m. Sleep's overrated when you've spent years making sure nobody kills you." She pulled out a pen, still the cheap ballpoint. Section 7, subsection C, employee agrees to maintain physical contact with employer as needed to establish romantic credibility. You want to translate that from corporate speak? It means when we're in public as a couple, you need to make it believable. Right. Touching. Hand-holding. Maybe some light arm draping. Elizabeth leaned back, arms crossed. "Here's my problem, I don't do heels, I don't do those skin-tight dresses soul women love, and I definitely don't do the submissive girlfriend act. So if you need me to be convincing, we're doing this my way." Kim set down his chopsticks. "Your way. My way. I'll touch you when it matters, make it count. But I'm not going to totter around in stilettos pretending I'm fragile. Your enemies need to see a woman who can stand next to you, not behind you." She met his eyes. "You want them to think you found someone who can handle you? Then let me actually handle you." Something flickered across Kim's face. Interest, maybe. Or suspicion. "What are your terms?" Elizabeth flipped to a blank page and started writing. 1. No heels. I'll wear boots or flats. I can't protect you if I can't run or fight. 2. Double the salary listed here. I'm not just a PA, I'm your work wife without the benefits, and that's premium pricing. 3. I get access to everything. Files, meetings, your actual enemies list. I can't play the role if I don't know who's trying to kill you. That's classified information. And I'm the person standing between you and a bullet. Your choice, trust me with secrets or find another assistant who'll last 3 days before they leak everything to your competition. She slid the paper across the table. 4. I need a weapon permit and basic combat training from your people. I saw real danger in Dongdukian, but your world is different. I need to be ready. Kim picked up the paper, scanning her additions. You think you can protect me? I know I can. Question is whether you'll let me. Most people who work for me would never demand double salary in their first negotiation. Most people who work for you are terrified of you. I'm not. Elizabeth leaned forward, her voice dropping. Look, I get it. You're the untouchable king who nobody can get close to. But here's the thing, I've survived worse than powerful men with control issues. Street life teaches you real quick that fear gets you killed. Respect keeps you alive. And you respect me? I respect what you've built. I respect that you're smart enough to know you need someone different. She held out her hand across the table. So do we have a deal, or should I go back to Dong Duqian and let you burn through another 17 assistants? Kim stared at her outstretched hand. In his world, deals were sealed with bows, formal agreements, elaborate ceremonies. But Elizabeth Rowley didn't do ceremonies. He took her hand. Her grip was firm, calloused. The handshake of someone who'd fought for everything she had. Double salary. No heels. Full access. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a test, maybe, to see if she'd flinch. She didn't. But the combat training isn't optional. If you're going to be next to me in public, you need to be ready for anything. Finally, something we agree on. Elizabeth pulled her hand back, already making notes in her phone. When's our first public appearance? Tomorrow night. Charity gala. Half of Seoul's elite will be there, along with 3 rival syndicate leaders. Perfect. Gives me 24 hours to find a dress that doesn't make me look like I'm playing pretend. She stood up, grabbing a piece of toast from her untouched plate. Oh, and boss? When I touch you tomorrow night, don't flinch. You flinch, they'll know it's fake. You need to look like you've been touched before. She walked out, leaving Kim alone with a modified contract and the uncomfortable realization that Elizabeth Rowley had just negotiated her way into becoming the most dangerous person in his life. Not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she was the first person in years who wasn't afraid to get close enough to do it. The boutique smelled like money and judgment. Elizabeth stood in front of a 3-way mirror wearing a red silk dress that probably cost more than her first car, feeling like an imposter in a world designed to exclude her. This one, the stylist said nervously, adjusting the fabric. Mr. Kim's previous companions preferred. I don't care what his previous companions preferred. Elizabeth grumbled. This shows too much. I need something I can move in, she said, pulling it off and putting on her black leather jacket. The boutique door chimed. Elizabeth caught the reflection first, a woman in a pristine white Chanel suit, her hair perfectly styled, her face a mask of cosmetic perfection. She walked like she owned the space, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Elizabeth. So it's true. The woman's voice dripped with disdain. Jung is slumming it now. The stylist went pale. Mississippi Park, Anna. The woman stepped closer, circling Elizabeth like a predator. You must be the American street girl everyone's talking about. Tell me, does he pay you by the hour or by the night? Elizabeth met her gaze in the mirror. You are? Someone who actually belongs in his world. Anna's smile was sharp. I was with Jung for 6 months before I realized he's defective. But at least I had the breeding to handle it with grace. You? You're just entertainment until he gets bored. Interesting theory. Elizabeth turned slowly, forcing Anna to step back. You done? I'm just getting started. You think you can waltz in here with your cheap clothes and Anna's eyes raked over her, your everything, and fit into his life? You're a novelty. A diversity hire. He'll use you up and throw you away like trash. Elizabeth tilted her head, considering. Trash. That's funny. It happened faster than the stylist could scream. Elizabeth grabbed Anna's designer suit jacket, twisted, and used the woman's own momentum to propel her backward through the boutique door. Anna shrieked as Elizabeth marched her across the sidewalk, past shocked pedestrians, straight to the alley beside the building where commercial dumpsters sat. What are you? No. No. Elizabeth lifted. Anna was lighter than expected, all that refined living and no actual muscle, and deposited her directly into an open trash bin. The sound of designer fabric meeting yesterday's garbage was deeply satisfying. Anna emerged sputtering, covered in coffee grounds and what might have been kimchi. You crazy bitch. Do you know who I am? Someone who doesn't belong in Jung's world anymore. Elizabeth pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of Anna's trash-covered indignation. Smile for the camera. I will destroy you. I'll tell everyone what you. Go ahead. Tell them the street girl put you exactly where you belong. Elizabeth pocketed her phone. And Anna? Next time you want to insult someone's breeding, maybe don't do it while wearing last season's Chanel. I might not know Soul Society, but I know desperation when I see it. She walked back into the boutique, leaving Anna screaming threats behind her. The stylist stood frozen, hands over her mouth. Mr. Kim is going to hear about this from me first. Elizabeth pulled out her phone, texted Kim the photo with a simple message, took out your trash. You're welcome. His response came in seconds, my office. Now. Elizabeth paid for the red dress with Kim's corporate card. If she was getting fired, she might as well look good doing it with the free dress, and headed for the tower. She found Kim in his office, her photo pulled up on his computer screen, his expression unreadable. So, Elizabeth said, dropping into the chair across from his desk. Before you fire me, you should know she started it. Kim's eyes flicked from the screen to her face. Anna called me 17 times in the last hour. And? I didn't answer. He leaned back, something that might have been amusement crossing his features. The photo's already viral. You're trending on 3 social media platforms. Hashtag Savage Street Queen is the current top hashtag. Elizabeth winced. That's not great. Actually, Kim turned his screen around, showing her the comments. It's perfect. Look at what they're saying. She scanned the posts. Finally, someone who doesn't take shit from these rich bitches. Kim Young's new girl is wild. I want her confidence. And from what looked like business accounts, message received. Don't test the American. Your enemies think I'm crazy, Elizabeth said slowly. They think you're dangerous. There's a difference. Kim stood, walked around the desk. Anna has connections to the Hyun syndicate. She was probably sent to intimidate you, see if you'd break. And I threw her in a dumpster instead. Exactly. Kim stopped in front of her, looking down with something that might have been respect. Now they know, the woman standing next to me doesn't intimidate easy. You just made my reputation stronger. Elizabeth met his eyes. So I'm not fired? You're getting a bonus. He almost smiled. And tomorrow night at the gala, every person there will be watching to see what else you're capable of. Great. No pressure. But as Kim walked back to his desk, Elizabeth realized something had shifted. She wasn't just the hired help anymore. She was the statement. And in Kim Young's world, statements written in garbage were the ones people remembered. The red dress fit perfectly, which Elizabeth hated to admit. She'd paired it with black ankle boots, no makeup, just natural, a compromise that made the stylist cry but kept her promise to Kim about no heels. Kim picked her up at 8 in a car that cost more than most houses. He wore a white shirt with a black suit, which made the tattoos peeking above his collar look even more dangerous. You look, he started. Uncomfortable. I know. Elizabeth adjusted the dress. But I clean up okay for someone who was sleeping in a hostel 2 months ago. I was going to say lethal. She glanced at him, caught something in his expression she couldn't quite read. That's the point, right? Make them think you found someone as dangerous as you are. Something like that. Kim's jaw tightened as the car pulled up to a restaurant that didn't have a sign, the kind of place where reservations were made through intermediaries and the menu was whatever the chef decided you deserved. Zhang was already seated, his silver hair immaculate, his suit probably worth more than Elizabeth's entire existence. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their eyes tracking every movement. Young. Zhang stood, offered a hand. His eyes slid to Elizabeth with calculated interest. And this must be the famous American everyone's talking about. The one who redecorates with garbage. Elizabeth Rowley. She took his hand, matched his grip. And it was recycling, actually. I'm very environmentally conscious. Zhang laughed, surprised. I like her already. She has teeth. They sat, Kim's hand finding the small of Elizabeth's back, a possessive gesture she'd expected. What she hadn't expected was the heat of his palm through the thin silk, the way her body reacted to something that was supposed to be performance. The dinner was a dance of implied threats and business propositions. Zhang wanted access to Kim's shipping routes. Kim wanted assurances that Zhang's people would stay out of Gangnam. Elizabeth played her role, smiling at appropriate moments, staying quiet while the men talked. Then Zhang made his mistake. You know, Young, I heard about your difficulties with women. 17 in a month, wasn't it? He swirled his wine. I'm curious what makes this one different. Is it just that American women have lower standards? Elizabeth felt Kim tense beside her. His hand on her thigh gripped harder, a warning to stay calm. Instead, she leaned into him, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "Let me handle this." Her hand slid to his chest, fingers tracing the edge of his collar. To anyone watching, it looked intimate. Only Kim could hear her actual words, "Trust me." She felt his breath catch, felt the way his entire body went rigid under her touch. Elizabeth turned to Zhang, her hand still on Kim's chest, possessive and unbothered. You want to know what makes me different? I'm not afraid of powerful men who think they're untouchable. I've handled worse than Kim on a bad day. She smiled, sweet as poison. And unlike your last 5 girlfriends, yes, I did my research, I don't run when things get intense. Zhang's expression shifted, respect mixing with wariness. Elizabeth leaned closer to Kim, adjusting his collar like she'd done it 1,000 times, her fingers deliberately slow. You have lint, she murmured, loud enough for Chen to hear the intimacy but not the words. Her hand lingered, thumb brushing against his throat where his pulse hammered. Kim's composure cracked for half a second, his eyes darkened, his breathing changed. Elizabeth felt it, the way he responded to her touch like no one had touched him in months. Maybe longer. She'd meant to make Zhang believe they were real. She hadn't meant to affect Kim this much. So about those shipping routes, Elizabeth said, still pressed against Kim's side, her hand now resting on his shoulder. My fiancé is willing to discuss terms, but only if you agree to stay out of our territory completely. No exceptions. No negotiations. Zhang blinked. That wasn't. It is now. Elizabeth's smile didn't reach her eyes. Because the thing about Americans with low standards? We're really good at identifying exactly what we're worth. And Kim's worth more than whatever you're offering. She felt Kim's hand cover hers on his shoulder, a gesture that looked romantic but felt like an anchor. Like he needed her to steady him. The dinner ended an hour later with Zhang agreeing to terms that heavily favored Kim. As they walked to the car, Kim's hand stayed at her back, his touch burning through silk. In the car, he said quietly. We need to talk. Elizabeth slid into the back seat, her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the negotiation. Kim climbed in beside her, and the driver pulled away, raising the privacy screen without being asked. What you did in there, Kim's voice was rough. Made Zhang think we're real. That was the job. You made me, he stopped, jaw working. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. Your hands on me, your voice in my ear. I know. Elizabeth met his eyes in the dim light of passing street lamps. I felt it. The way you responded. This can't happen. But even as Kim said it, his hand was still on her thigh, his body angled toward her like gravity had shifted. It was just acting, Elizabeth said, not believing her own words. Was it? The car felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Kim's eyes dropped to her lips, and Elizabeth realized with startling clarity that she was in trouble. Not from Zhang. Not from rival syndicates. From the way Kim Young looked at her like she was simultaneously his salvation and his destruction. Just acting, she repeated, softer this time. But neither of them moved away. Elizabeth pulled away first, reaching into her clutch for her phone like the moment between them had never happened. Her fingers flew across the screen, all business. Kim blinked, the spell broken. What are you doing? Checking to make sure the data transfer completed. She didn't look up. It should be done by now, Zhang's phone had decent security but nothing I couldn't crack in a bathroom stall. Zhang's phone. Kim's voice went flat, dangerous. Explain. Elizabeth finally looked at him, eyebrows raised like he was being slow. The goodbye hug. You saw it. I went in for the cheek kiss thing soul people do, got close, lifted his phone from his jacket pocket. Classic bump and grab. Took maybe 3 seconds. She reached into her clutch again and tossed an expensive smartphone onto Kim's lap. He caught it reflexively, staring at the device like it might explode. You stole Zhang's phone. At dinner. While I was he stopped, realization dawning. While you were distracting me. While I was distracting everyone. Elizabeth's smile was sharp. Zhang was too busy being offended by the American with low standards. His bodyguards were watching your hands to make sure you didn't pull a weapon. And you, she tilted her head, you were too busy losing your composure to notice I had an actual agenda. Kim's grip tightened on the phone. You used me. I used the situation. There's a difference. Elizabeth held up her own phone, showing him a progress bar that read clone complete. I had about 90 seconds while you were signing the check. Plugged his phone into this, she pulled a small device from her clutch, cloned everything. Contacts, messages, emails, encrypted files. Then I wiped my fingerprints and put it back in my bag. You're insane. If Zhang realizes. He won't. His phone's been on silent since I took it. No missed calls, no notifications. I'll have the driver find it in the back seat tomorrow morning, return it to Zhang with apologies. He'll think it fell out during the goodbye. Elizabeth pocketed her phone and the cloning device. Meanwhile, we have access to every communication he's had in the last 6 months. Kim stared at her, something between admiration and horror crossing his face. Who the hell are you? Someone who survived Don Dukian by being smarter than the people trying to exploit me. Elizabeth's voice hardened. You think I made it on the streets with just attitude? I learned skills, Kim. Useful ones. Pickpocketing. Basic hacking. Reading people. Knowing exactly when to smile and when to strike. You could start a war with this. If Zhang finds out. Then we better make sure the information is worth it. Elizabeth leaned forward, her earlier performance completely gone. This was the real her, calculating, dangerous, utterly unbothered by consequences. I saw the way Zhang looked at you. He's not interested in negotiations. He's interested in taking everything you have. So either we strike first with information, or we wait for him to make his move. Kim was quiet for a long moment, his thumb hovering over Zhang's phone. The touching. The whispering. That was all. Strategy. Keep you off balance so you wouldn't notice what my other hand was doing. Elizabeth's eyes glinted in the darkness. Although she paused, your reaction was real. That I didn't expect. You played me. I played the room. You just happened to be in it. But something in her expression softened, just slightly. For what it's worth, the way you responded, that wasn't part of the plan. That complicated things. Complicated. Made it harder to stay focused. Elizabeth looked away first, which Kim noticed. But we got what we needed. Zhang's data could tell us who he's working with, what territories he's planning to hit, maybe even which of your people he's trying to flip. Kim powered on Zhang's phone, scrolled through messages with practiced efficiency. His expression darkened with each screen. He's been in contact with the Park family. And the Tanaka group in Tokyo. Building a coalition against you. Planning a coordinated hit on 3 of my warehouses next week. Kim's jaw tightened. If you hadn't stolen this, I'd be bad at my job. Elizabeth reached over, her finger swiping to another folder on Zhang's phone. There's more. Financial records. Payments to someone inside your organization. You've got a leak, Kim. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Not as the PA he'd hired. Not as the woman who'd made him lose focus at dinner. but as something else entirely, a weapon he'd accidentally acquired, more dangerous than he'd realized. Why? Kim asked quietly. You could have just played the role. Done what I asked. You didn't have to steal from one of the most dangerous men in Seoul. Elizabeth met his eyes. Because you're paying me double salary to be more than a pretty face at parties. You're paying me to keep you alive. She took Zhang's phone back, powered it off. And I take my job very seriously. The car pulled up to Kim's tower. Elizabeth opened her door, paused. Oh, and boss? Next time you need me to distract someone, give me a heads up. I'll wear something with better pockets. She walked away, leaving Kim sitting in the back seat with the uncomfortable realization that Elizabeth Rowley wasn't just dangerous. She was the most valuable and terrifying asset he'd ever acquired. And he had no idea how to handle her. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it. So click on the image showing on your screen to watch the part 2.